But thank you all for joining us again for another one of our webinars here at Camera West. We wish you could all be here in the store. We could show you these cool cameras and items in person and talk about them and whatnot, but we will make this do for the time being. If you have any issues with connecting, you get disconnected or the app crashes or something like that, just go back to that email that was sent out with the link. Click on that again, it will open everything back up again. And we will be posting the recording of this webinar on our blog later, as with all of our webinars that we've been doing over the past couple of weeks. We'll go ahead and post that with any assets that might go along with the webinar that you might find interesting. Before I turn it over to Michael, we'll let him go through his presentation as normal, and then at the end we'll open it up for Q&A. You can leave your questions in either the chat or the Q&A section here on Zoom. Either one works, and I'll go ahead and facilitate those, and we'll try to answer as many as we can. So without any more chatting from my end, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Michael.
Hey everybody. Hey Ben. It's kind of sad to think that a mere like 3 weeks from now we would all be convening in Palm Springs for the Palm Springs Photo Festival, which will not be happening for a while. So I am Michael. I'm coming to you from Burbank. Probably, I'm going to guess some of you who are watching this may have met me in the store. And I appreciate you giving me, 45 minutes of your time. We're going to talk about the X-T4 camera. I've got it right here. So isn't that cool? Isn't that a great, wonderful design? Oh, wait a minute. Sorry. That is a 20-year-old Finepic 6800Z. My mistake. I apologize. That's the X-T4. There it is. See, it says so right there. Okay. So I'm going to get into my PowerPoint. Like Ben said, mostly it's just going to be me talking for the next 45 minutes. I'm going to probably try to answer almost every significant question that you would have about the camera. We're not going to get too far into the weeds. This is meant to be a first look. And we'll do questions at the end, okay? So just sit tight if you've got something, because I may get to it, and if not, we'll have to get to it at the end. So I'm going to try my screen share here, see what happens. Okay, I want that. Ben, is everybody, you seeing my my presentation?
Looks great on my end, Michael.
Okay, good. All right. So again, thank you to Camera West for setting this up. Much appreciated, and Ben in particular. Let's see, come on. All right. So who's the camera for? Well, we've had the X-T1, the X-T2, the X-T3, the X-T4. So this is obviously an update to a lineage now that goes back about 6 years ago. I know this sounds like a totally BS thing to say, but I really think the X-T4 is a camera for everybody. It's great for every user level, from beginning to pro, and it's great for everything from stills to video and a whole way of capturing. So you'll find out why I say that as we go through that. So it will be available in 2 kit options. So there will be the body only, okay, for $16.99. That is $200 more than the X-T3. So this is the X-T3, and I'm going to be comparing the two. So I happen to think that for the extra $200, you really get the bang for the buck. It's quite an impressive camera. You'll be able to get it with 2 kit lenses. If you don't want body only, so you'll be able to get it with the 1855. That has been our sort of our standard kit now for many years. It's a 2.8/4 variable lens, small, compact, very, very competent. And then you could also get it with the 16 to 80 f4. So that's a f4, not a variable. So the price difference between those 2 lenses, those kit options, will be $100. So it's not really a very high premium to pay to get an extra lens on top of that. So primarily what we're going to try to talk about, again, is the new things that are in the X-T4. A lot of it shares with the T3. And, these are kind of the things that we're going to go into in depth in the next couple of minutes. So weather resistant, yes, it still is weather resistant, all right, which is really, really great news. For those of you in Southern California, we just got dumped on for the last 2 weeks. These cameras, I have shot them in the rain. I have shot the lenses, the cameras in the rain. Honest to God, they actually they work beautifully. They keep going. So I'm very happy to say our engineers did a good job with that. The basic layout is still quite similar to the XH and the XT in many, many ways. So a couple of new things that we will point out, but if you look at it, all of this should be completely familiar to those of you who have seen the demos in the store before. All the basics are there. We really didn't move very much. A couple of minor tweaks here and there. Right? This is a view from the top. Again, mostly it's the same. The shutter release has been improved. It's a different feel to it. It's much more, the longevity on it has been increased. But again, basic operation on this is nothing that's going to be any different. And then there are a couple of changes to the in-out ports and some changes to the drive dial. So there is now a built-in HDR mode on the drive dial itself, and that's the thing that's here on top of the up here underneath the ISO is that rotating collar underneath the ISO. So there now is a dedicated HDR function for that. That the HDR on this thing kicks butt. It's really phenomenally good. Microphone jack and a remote jack, USB-C. And the USB-C will not only give you the ability to charge and run the camera off of external power, but that is now going to be the headphone jack if you don't have the vertical power grip, okay? So to have a headphone jack on camera, you will have to have a little adapter that comes with the camera, okay? So it'll plug into the USB-C. We'll get into that. Still dual card slots, but if you notice the layout now, they are side by side instead of stacked one on top of another. And the card slot door is now removable. So that's new. It's coming soon. We actually have not quite nailed down a date on this yet, but we're, most probably next month, but it's still to be decided. So again, these are basically the features that are in yellow you're going to see, we're going to go into in depth. So one of the first things that stands out on the X-T4 versus the X-T3 is the addition of in-body stabilization. Okay, in-body image stabilization, IBIS. As you know, we first came out with this on our cameras with the XH1, and that camera was really good, and the camera was a bit fatter. So they took that unit, they re-engineered it. They found a way to make it smaller and lighter and way, way better. And they were able to pack it into the T-size body instead of having to go with the H-size body. See performance specs on that. So you will now get up to 6.5 stops of stabilization. 6.5 stops of stabilization. That's in still shooting. With almost all of our lenses and basically any third-party lens out there, anything that goes back even 50 years ago. There will be some variations. So the IBIS, the IBIS unit in the body now works in concert with the OIS in the lenses. They actually work together. It used to be with the H1, they would communicate, but they would share the load. They would sort of split it. Now they actually work together. So this is going to be a demonstration that came from our engineers of how good it is. So this was a shot. This was done with the 56 millimeter, the XF 56 millimeter 1.2 lens, which is a portrait lens. Rock solid, but has no image stabilization of its own. Okay, so this is a zero stabilized lens. This is all in body. So we're going to look at some magnified images of that orange square in the middle. So now this is in handheld mode on a shake table, and you can see from 1/25th of a second down to 1/4 of a second is absolutely no difference whatsoever in the sharpness. This is with a 56 millimeter non-stabilized lens down to 1/4 of a second. That's really cool. Okay, well, maybe you're not impressed. How about at 1 full second? So 1 full second, it's absolutely still razor sharp with a portrait focal length lens. And at 2 seconds, it is still completely, totally usable. I mean, if you go back and look at the amount of crop that is, okay, that is still a completely usable image, 2 seconds, handheld with a portrait length lens. That's really, really cool. Along with the IBIS unit itself, which is, surrounds the shutter and the sensor, the shutter itself has been completely redesigned. So it's a whole brand new shutter. The number one thing about this is it's got double the life from the X-T3, all right? This was rated for 150,000 actuations. The X-T4 is rated for 300,000 actuations. Now, it'll probably go way, way past that. That's what we're guaranteeing it. That's the warranty for it, okay? And it will do up to 15 frames a second in mechanical shutter. And right now, that is actually state-of-the-art in the camera business, okay? Mechanical shutter, not electronic shutter. So the X-T4 does have electronic shutter still, and you can do 20 FPS and all the way up to 30, just like the T3 did, but the X-T3 maxed out at 11. Now, why do you care about mechanical shutter? Well, as you know, in today's day and age, a lot of things are being lit by LED. And if it's not being lit by LED, a lot of times you'll go to a concert or some kind of an event, like a corporate speaking event, and there will be an LED projection wall in the background. So electronic shutter can give you some very, very unpleasant banding effects, flickering and banding, because of the rolling shutter as it reads the sensor out. Mechanical shutter does away with that. You won't have that problem. So being able to shoot at 15 frames per second with something that's very quiet and stabilized is going to be really, really good for shooting corporate presentations and concerts and things like that. I don't know if you can hear the audio. This is just a video that Tokyo put together. I don't really think this is all that super cool. I'm going to momentarily stop my share so you can see me more full screen. I've got myself a mic right here, all right, that sits right in front of me, is just at the bottom of frame line. I want you to hear for yourselves the difference between the T3 and the T4, okay? So both of these have the same exact lens on them. They both have the 16 millimeter 2.8 lens. They're both set at 1/25th of a second. They're both a mechanical shutter. The T3 is set to CH at 11. So that's the fastest it'll go. It's going to be at 11. The T4 is set at 15, the fastest it'll go. So I want you to hear the difference. So I'm just going to hold this right here. I'm going to put it up against my chin. You'll see it as I'm not cheating. I'll do that again. That's the T3. I'm going to give you the T4 to listen to. Same place. And the T3. I'm telling you, it's a dramatic difference. And remember, I'm right up close to the mic here on this. So you're hearing an exaggerated difference in the sound. But imagine you being just a couple of feet away from somebody, they're really, really barely going to notice you. So let's go back to my screen and move on to the next slide. Come on, next slide. Thank you. So along with that performance, we're getting a new battery. Yeah, I know a lot of you are groaning right there, especially those of you that are existing T-Series owners. Well, that battery's been around for a while, and we needed to make it better. So it's still in the same place underneath, okay? Come on, pop out of there. But it is a different battery. The good thing about it is it has double the lifespan of the MP126 battery that we've had for a while, okay? So with the battery grip, you're going to get close to 2,000 frames of shooting without having to stop. I don't know why the price there is in Canadian. I need to fix that. But it's basically a battery's like $69 American dollars, okay? 69. it's a really, really cool battery. So a lot of people are going to welcome that. So there will be a new battery grip. Sorry, the grip itself is going to be different. I forgot to bring it on me. You can see probably from the slide, it's similar to the X-T2, X-T3 grips that we've had out there. Looks maybe a little bit more like the XH1 grip because the battery is wider. So there goes sideways. So the grip part of that is actually a little bit wider. So it's not quite the same, but it does include 2 extra batteries. So when you get the grip, you're getting the grip and 2 extra batteries. And when the grip is attached to the camera, you'll be able to charge all 3 batteries at once by plugging into the camera, okay? There is no AC power connector in the battery grip. All the AC power input is going to go through the USB slot that's on the side of the camera, okay? And there's a separate charger. I'll talk to that in a second. But it will, however, include the 3.5 millimeter headphone jack. So for those of you that are really pro-level video shooters with the vertical power grip on this, and you're shooting something like a wedding or a concert, you want to monitor audio on camera, this is the way to do it and still have a good long-running solution. So there's going to be, for the first time, we have a dual charger. So it's a newly designed thing. It's also going to be about $70. It's a really nice unit. It will run off of USB-C, and it will run off the USB-C adapter that actually comes with the camera. So the USB-C adapter that comes with the camera is a special, very high wattage unit. Okay, it's 15 watts. It's not what you use to charge your cell phone. You can charge your cell phone with it, but this puts out a heck of a lot more current, so it will be able to charge the batteries faster and will charge, like I said, when you plug it into the camera, it will charge all 3 batteries at the same time. What's nice about this dual battery charger is it has an LCD display on it. It will give you the percentage of charge, so you'll know when you're almost there. This is something I think most of you are going to like. Some of you may hate it, being upfront, but it is different. So on the X-T3, all of our cameras are T3 series. You know, we've had the swing out LCD that comes out to the side, so you can see it when you're standing off to the side of the camera, and it goes 45 down, 90 degrees up. But in order to make this more video friendly and more blogger friendly, the new LCD, okay, flips forward. So, and it rotates to the back, okay? So it flips forward for those of you that want to shoot selfie videos for vlogging. Of course, it will then also allow you to hold it vertically, see it that way, or rotate it back into what's sort of the normal orientation so you can see the back of the camera that way. Now, what is nice is on the front or back side, depending on what it is, there is a solid plastic cover here. So when you flip it shut for putting into your camera bag for traveling, it protects the screen. So I'll hold it there. You can see that is a solid piece of plastic. So it's a built-in screen protector. You just rotate it, flip it around. It's very, very nice. It's higher in resolution, and it is, of course, it remains to be a touch screen as well. It's a brand new viewfinder. So in the other X-Series cameras, except I think we changed with the X Pro 3, those are all LCD screens. They're really good, they're great, but this now has an OLED screen. OLED means organic LED. And these are the kinds of screens that you find in high-end broadcast displays, and you do find them in some TVs, but you got to pay like $1,000 extra to get those in TVs these days. The advantage of them is they're brighter, they're sharper, and they're much higher in contrast. So you get really, really good black in these now, okay? So it's an almost 4 megapixel EVF. And you have choice of boost modes now with the camera, so where you can prioritize different things, whether you want the camera to prioritize power to AF, or you want to prioritize power to the refresh rate on the EVF. It all depends on what you're shooting. you can tell the camera how you want the power management to go, all right? It also has an improved eyepiece. So the eyepiece comes off in a completely different way. It's much more harder to pull it off. Our older cameras, the eyepiece was a little too easy to come off. We had some issues with that. But yeah, you really got to click this thing off, click hard to pull the eyepiece off. So that's something, another improvement. So it will be in two colors, silver and black. So the black is going to be just like what you're looking here, even though it's a T3, silver and black. And now the comparison between the body in terms of size and weight. So here's the good thing is they are very, 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 very close, okay? So the height on the two cameras is absolutely no different, all right? Same height across the top. Where things do get different are, first of all, the width, so side to side. In order to accommodate a slightly larger LCD, slightly bigger batteries, it gained a few millimeters going left to right, but it also gained a few millimeters sort of in the bottom. So I don't know if you can quite see it if I hold that up on the screen, but you can see the T3 is thinner, okay, on the bottom than the T4. So it's only a few millimeters, but it's noticeable. But the nice thing is the grip, I think. The hand grip does stick out farther than on the T3, the T2. So you've got more purchase there with your fingers when you're grabbing the camera. We didn't make it overly large because once you make it overly large, people with small hands can't use it. So you can't go backwards, but we did increase it a couple of millimeters. It feels really, really nice. And it gains a little bit of weight as well, but not significant. So this is a direct comparison then between some of the specs. The low light we'll get to, I mentioned that. So this is I'm very impressed with is even though it's the same sensor as the X-T3, I think I should have mentioned that earlier, or maybe I have slides, but it is the same sensor as the X-T3. It is actually the same processor as the X-T3. However, the engineers added a whole bunch of other parallel circuitry and a lot of parallel computing algorithms that take what's coming off of that sensor and through that processor and are able to crunch it much, much faster and much, much better. So there is a noticeable performance increase, okay? In particular with autofocus. So if you look at the spec on autofocus for low light, it's down to -6 EV. That's a 3-stop improvement over the X-T3 just by using the same sensor, but by using the data much, much better, we go to get an extra 3 stops. So these are sort of the highlights. You can look at that real quickly. And then we'll show you a couple of demos here. So here is a really cool demo showing you the autofocus, the continuous autofocus. This is our Fuji friend up in Canada, Billy. So I'm going to let you watch this play first. And as he moves his head around, this is eye detection. There's no audio. So watch how it tracks his eye. Okay, and obviously this is in video mode. So I'm going to play that again. Come on. So he turns again, it reacquires his eye, and watch, he walks away from the camera, and look how small his head gets in the frame, and it still stays locked onto his eye. All right, this is way, way better than what we used to have. So this is another one. So now this is in what's called the wide tracking mode, where you're using the entire sensor to follow something through the frame. So again, I'm going to let this play on its own. Just let you watch. It moves back and forth. It stays riveted on him. He goes out of frame. He comes back into frame and boom, it acquires him right away. So, sorry, I want to go back to that. I want to show you this. So I want to ask you to watch something. I'm going to pause it actually when he goes out of frame. So as you can see, it's locked onto him. Moves around. Oh, come on, my screen. And right there, I'm going to pause that. You notice it had focused on the background because he went out of frame. There was nothing in the frame, so it went on the background. And now, crap, I am so sorry. Watch when he goes out of frame, it'll rack to the back. And then as soon as he comes back into frame, it goes right back to his face. Background, boom, back to his face. It's really, really cool. Excellent, excellent autofocus tracking. So there are a couple other new things. You know, there are now 3 auto white balance modes on this that you can sort of prioritize what your what the feeling is you want of your picture. We now have the precise. We had the highlight shadow adjustment before, but now you have the ability to actually see a tone curve on the screen as you're adjusting the highlight and shadow curve. It doesn't affect the raw files; it only affects the JPEGs. But speaking of raw files, so now in-camera RAW, which we've had for a lot of our cameras, you can convert the cameras to JPEGs, but now you can also convert them to 16-bit TIFFs in camera. So while you're sitting in a coffee shop, going through your raw files, and you want to play with pushing and pulling and change the white balance or do whatever you want, you can make 16-bit TIFFs in camera, all right? There's a now battery age menu. So this will actually show you when your battery needs to be replaced, not when it needs to be recharged, but when your battery is about to actually hit end of life. So that's a nice thing. The Q menu gives you some options. And then there is the HDR mode, which is fantastic. I'm not going to go into it. And an autofocus range limiter, which we introduced with the X Pro 3, which is really nice for street photography, which means you can set a custom zone for where the autofocus will only operate in. So you can say, I want to completely disregard anything closer than 3 feet and completely disregard anything farther away than 6 feet, and it will never focus on anything outside of that mode. So it's really great when you're sitting on a sidewalk cafe and you're just trying to grab shots of people walking past on the sidewalk, something really helpful. We've had focus bracketing in the camera before, and I just wanted to show you that was just a nice little demo that the factory had put together as it goes through, you know, a couple of hundred slides. So we do not have in-camera focus stacking. We are doing the capture. You still have to take all those files and put them into Photoshop or something else and actually merge them together into a single file. So video, let's talk about video. So following up on the X-T3, it does have full cinema 4K up to 60p, all right, because it is the same sensor. So full cinema 4K at up to 60p internal, and it is in 10-bit. But here's one of the nicest things that we did with this camera. So as you see on the close-up on the slide, where it used to be the rotating collar thing for selecting the metering mode on our cameras underneath the shutter speed. So now it is a rotating collar. You probably won't be able to see that. That is still and movie. So what they've basically done is they've taken the camera and they've made it 2 cameras in one, 2 completely different identities of camera in one. When you're in the movie mode setting, you cannot access the still menus at all. You can't get to them, all right? When you're in the still mode shooting, you can't access the movie mode menu at all, which means you cannot possibly make a mistake on changing setup. When you set something up to shoot movie and say you're a wedding photographer or shooting any other kind of event, and you go back and forth between grabbing stills and then rolling some video, all you got to do is just flip this lever. It's right there by your index finger, right next to the shutter speed. Flip it, boom, it goes into movie mode, hit this thing, you roll your movie, boom, flip it back into still mode, you're back into shooting stills without having to fumble around where the different buttons might be located, and your settings will never change. So I really think it's phenomenal. It's brilliant. So there are a couple of new things that we added in addition to the 60p. And again, I'm going to reiterate, it is still 10-bit internal. That's 60p, 10-bit internal with all intra and H.265 compression. We had the Eterna film sim now going back several camera models, which was our motion picture negative emulation. It goes back to our motion picture negatives film stock. Well, we added something called bleach bypass. I'll show you an example of what that looks like shortly, but that was a very, very cool processing trick that popped up, I don't know, late 60s and 70s. It was kind of popular. where you literally would skip the bleach bath in the development process of the negative, and it will give you a very, very unusual look. So one of the new things we upped is in HD, the X-T4 will be able to do 240 frame per second capture, 240 frame capture in HD. So when you play back at 24p, you've got a 10x slowdown. It's really cool. So you can do some really, really fun things with that. If you do shoot in log, if you're shooting in F-log, what we did add was an assist function by way of a button now. So if I'm in movie mode, I can show you what that looks like real close. Give me a second here. So hold on, let me put this into F-log. It moved, I apologize. By way of a button, you can now switch from the F-log view, all right, into a Rec 709 profile, the Provia standard view. Instead of having to exit F-log and go into it, you just toggle it with a button, it's a function button, which is very, very helpful when you're trying to do manual focus, because with the F-log being so flat and muddy looking, sometimes getting accurate focus was a problem for people. And then we have some new microphone settings, and something that I'm really, really happy about is dual card slot recording at the same time for video. So you can now record a backup on the fly without using an external recorder, all right? The image stabilization works phenomenally with video in particular. So I showed you the spec and how it works with still photography. It's a real gain for a motion picture. So there's no way to actually measure it in a way of stops with motion picture, because it doesn't quite work that way, because you're basically always shooting sort of at a 1/48th of a second. But you'll see an example here of how much better it is. Now, you sometimes will get a crop with that. So we've added something called digital image stabilization. So you've got the mechanical IBIS that works with the sensor and the lens together. But if you really want additional stability, you can now have the camera take the actual file that comes off the sensor. So IBIS is pre-file, pre-recording. The digital image is actually after recording. The file, it analyzes the file itself, and then it moves the pixels around within the frame to add additional stabilization. So in order to do that, though, you got to crop. You're going to lose some some stuff around the edges. So you get a 0.29 crop with digital image stabilization that you don't get when you're just using regular IBIS, okay? There's also what we call the fixed crop option. So when you're switching between, say, HD, if you're say full cinema 4K and regular UHD 4K, the aspect ratio is actually different. Or if you're switching from go to high speed in HD, that's a different aspect ratio than cinema 4K. So if you don't want the aspect ratio to change on your recorded file, this will give you a constant 29% crop no matter what mode you're actually shooting in. So this here is a comparison of digital image stabilization. This is shot with the 1655 2.8 lens. So that's with digital image stabilization turned off. So this is IBIS plus DIS turned on. And then with the DIS turned on, it's definitely smoother. I think there's probably going to be some stutter on your end from the bandwidth, since we're doing this online, and a side-by-side. So you might notice that picture being a little bit cropped with the DIS turned on, right? Slight crop. Okay. And this is now something called IS mode boost. So this is a little bit different than the DIS. So what this does is it takes it's the mechanical IBIS, but it's throwing extra processing power at it and making it absolutely as rock solid as possible. The downside of that is the IBIS, you can move the camera around. You can walk with it, you can pan, tilt, and it works beautifully. But with IS mode boost, it doesn't give you the best results because it's not designed for that. This is designed for when you're standing in one place, say you're trying to record a speaker, all right? And you're trying to stand in one place, no tripod, no monopod, you're handheld, and you want to absolutely have that frame locked in place. So that's what that's for. So take a look. So this is again shot with the 1655 2.8 lens, which is not stabilized, handheld. So that's with a boost. If you look at the frame edge, if you look at the edge of that around the mirror, you can really see that it's not moving at all. So it really, really, really works, but this is not for walking. This is not for panning and tilting, okay? And then I'm almost finished here. So this is what the Eterna looks like, which, like I said, so some of you have had other cameras before are used to this. It's a beautiful, low saturation, delicate color palette, very, very movie-like, just ready to go without having further grading. This now is the Eterna Bleach Bypass. So I'm hoping some of you are seeing this on large monitors, not just on the phone, but go back to Eterna Bleach Bypass. Eterna Bleach Bypass. So the unique thing about Bleach Bypass is the color gets sucked out. So it's really, really low saturation, but at the same time, it amps up the contrast. And that's something that usually does not go together. That's not something you find in any typical film stock without doing some playing around. So that's the end of my presentation. Let me stop the screen share here. So do we have any questions, Ben?
Michael, I think you did such a thorough job explaining everything. We haven't gotten any yet. If anyone has any, go ahead and leave them in the chat or whatever, and we'll go ahead and try to get those answered for you. I know.
Were you able to successfully hear the audio difference between the shutters?
Yeah, that was the first thing I noticed when I picked the camera up myself. It was just how much more quiet that shutter is. I've got the X-T3 still, and it was significantly quiet. You could hear it in your microphone. Yeah. It's just as obvious in person.
And it's just silky smooth in your hand. I mean, that's the remarkable. There's just like no impact, that it's transmitting into the body. So it just totally feels like you're holding a stick of butter. It's melting in your hand.
Yeah, it's got an entirely different feel altogether. It feels like a much higher quality product than the X-T3 did, and it's really it's just a couple $100 more, as you said.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's ergonomically the X-T4 is light years ahead of where the X-T3 was when I was testing it before the launch. It was
nice to hear from a third party. Good, thank you.
Really excited about the camera. We did have a question from Carrie. Are they going to have a bundle with the battery grip and that dual charger, or are those completely separate? I can't remember.
Right now, the only bundles that I'm aware of are going to be the kit options with the lenses. So body plus lens. There's been absolutely nothing that I've heard of whatsoever in terms of body and grip. So who knows, that might happen sometime, but right now I'd say the answer is no. And the charger is a separate item, unfortunately. So the camera comes with this high power USB-C adapter that you plug into the camera itself. But the charger will be a separate purchase. And I'm going to guess, ours is a dual charger, but I'm going to guess that probably by the time the camera comes out, there might be third-party vendors that will already have their own single battery charger things coming out. I don't know, but I'm guessing they will.
Yeah, the battery life was significantly better. That was the other thing I noticed when I was testing the camera.
Yeah, I mean, you almost just don't need to charge it anymore. So
yeah, the first initial impression was like, oh no, there's a different battery because I've got a whole stack of W126S's sitting on my desk, but it's significantly better in performance and in longevity. So James had a question about external mic possibility for video. You said there was a 3.5 millimeter jack on there, correct?
Yeah, so that did not change. So there is still right here on the side of the body, if you can see it right up here, 3.5 millimeter mic input. So just like the T3 had and the XH1 had. And that's kind of standard on basically every camera in this price range in this realm. I use a lot of shotgun mics sometimes, you know, in production, of course. I just use an XLR to 1/8 inch adapter cable. There's billions of them out there on the market. Also, I have wireless lavs that I put on the top of the camera that just plug into that same thing, that 1.8 inch, 1/8 inch, 3.5 millimeter plug. So yeah, no problems at all. And then you can set the audio levels in the menu. You can certainly set the preamp level to be wherever you want it to be.
Sure. That makes sense.
I don't know if that was that the question?
Yeah, exactly. And is there extra inputs on the grip? I can't remember. I think the X-T3 grip had like an extra input or something like that.
No, so the X-T3 grip had an extra input for AC power.
That's right. That's what it was.
But it, but the X-T4 grip does not have an AC power input, but it has the microphone jack. So it has a 3.5 millimeter microphone jack, because on the T4, there is no microphone jack on the body itself. I know everybody groaned. I understand. I groaned too when I heard it. But it does come with a little adapter that you plug into the USB-C. So you can use the USB-C as a microphone for when you're doing really small, portable, lightweight things. Or if you do want to throw this on a gimbal, okay, you can. So you don't have to have the microphone on there. That's really what their thinking was about it. Not everybody has to have the headphone on the camera. So.
Right. We got another question here. Let's see here. Let me take this in from. Russ is debating between a couple different cameras. So Russ, if you have any more questions on that, go ahead and shoot us an email. We will help you decide if you need any assistance there. And Carrie, do you know, Carrie's got a question. Do you think, or do you know, are you allowed to say if external bleach bypass will be available in other Fujifilm cameras with a future update?
I have absolutely no idea. Zero idea at this point. I can only speculate that I'm going to say it likely happened. And again, I'm going to speculate because that's happened in the past. With other cameras, some of that stuff has trickled down. I can tell you that I know that the software vendors out there for raw processing, I'm sure they are feverishly working on having eternal bleach bypass as being one of the options that they will have built in when their updates come out for the X-T4. So that will not be an issue. You will be able to get that. But bear in mind, again, that the software versions, the third-party versions of our film simulations don't match our film simulations exactly. Our film simulations are our proprietary IT. They're our film stocks, so it's our color science. So we don't actually share that with anybody. But it will be out there. However, like I said, the answer to your question is zero information about that at that time. I'm just going to simply speculate, probably. But it will probably vary from camera to camera because different cameras have different amounts of memory, available memory built into the camera where they can add stuff. Sometimes they just can't add any more stuff to a camera because they've used up all the built-in memory.
That makes sense to me. Do we have, we didn't quite cover this, but is there a, let's see here. Russ is asking a question about crop versus full frame sensor. Would you compare, I think what Russ is asking here is that does the X-T4 compare to a full frame sensor? I think we've all said this for a while now with a lot of X series cameras and how they compare to full frame sensors. What would your opinion be on that, Michael?
Well, I mean, we could spend probably the next half hour on deciding what does the word compare mean. And it's just one of those things. It's a rabbit hole you really don't want to go down to if you start asking which is better, because that's, quite frankly, that's nonsense, in my opinion. There are just different things, or you have different optics. Primarily, your main difference is you're going to use a completely different set of lenses. So that's the primary difference between using, say, M4/3 APS-C full frame or medium format. You've got different optics and you've got different characteristics that come on your image as a result of using different focal lengths to get different angle of view. So other than that, it's just too broad a question to say, does it compare? In terms of specs, performance, low light, frames per second, video, all these things, I am going to say, quite frankly, publicly, this camera outshoots a whole boatload of full frame cameras. So I'm not afraid of saying that. This outperforms a whole boatload of full frame cameras that you pay a lot more money for. So that's my personal opinion on that. Take it for what it's worth.
I completely agree. And the lenses, as Michael was saying, that are developed specifically for that APS-C format with Fujifilm they've always been just fantastic. The combination, the focal length translate into, the 56 is more like an 85 type of thing. They translate beautifully on that sensor, and the fact that they're designed together, they work together beautifully. It's the system that is really going to, I guess change what.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, you could probably speak to this from the dealer side of things, but certainly from all the, bazillion trade shows I've been to and being dealers, we've found a lot of people, is to paraphrase, a lot of people get into the X series because of the camera, because they love the feel, they love the operation, and they like the output. And then they stay for the lenses, because we've been an optical manufacturer for like 70 years, almost as long as we've been a film manufacturer. We really know what we're doing when it comes to glass. And we have over 30 lenses to choose from, that our own Fujinon lenses for this system, over 30 to choose from. And we keep having more and more coming. So you can adapt other stuff. You can adapt full frame lenses if you want, by way of adapter, but the autofocus is really, really fast on our cameras. They've got weather sealing, they're smaller, they're lighter, and quite frankly, they're usually priced a lot better than the competition as well. And yet, we make $100,000 movie lenses. So this is not like something that this is just a side project for us. We really know what we're doing when it comes to optics.
I agree. We had one other question here. Michael, how are you dealing with the quick access to the screen when it's closed, is I believe what Mike here is asking. Like when you pull it out of the bag and the screen is completely shut, and you need to use the camera real quick. How does that work?
So this is it closed. I mean, let's see, I'm trying to get a reflection on it so you can see, where is it? There it is. So you can see it's closed. All right, so I pull it out of the bag, I do this, I flip it, bam.
Easy.
There's my LCD. But there's nothing that says you can, I mean, this is the way the cameras have been now for years anyway, with the exposed LCD. We shove them into our camera bag like this, right? So if you're worried about quick access, just pack it this way. Pack it with the LCD actually showing. Just saying, if it's a question of just trying to protect it, now it's protected. No, I mean, that takes a second and a half to do that.
Yeah. And you also can use the X-T4 without the screen. You can just turn it on and start shooting through the EVF immediately.
Oh yeah, right. So you just leave it covered and protected. Just go to, just use the EVF, right?
Yeah.
Which is, I'm gonna get crap for this, which is the way real photographers do it.
I was excited to see the screen stayed closed. I mean, sometimes you just don't need to look at it. You know, you can just use the camera without, almost like the X Pro 3 a little bit. We have one person asking about trade-up programs. I don't believe that Fujifilm has any, at least they haven't sent me any notice about trade-up programs, but we do trade-ins here in the store. So if you have another system or that you want to upgrade from a previous XT model, go ahead and shoot us an email or give us a call. We can get you an estimate and get that ball rolling for you. But we do all kinds of trade-ins here, so we can most certainly facilitate a trade up to the X-T4. I think James had another question that we already kind of answered in our previous question about using vintage Nikon lenses on an X-T4.
Sure. Yeah.
Absolutely, you can do it.
You could use the old stuff from the 1960s, full manual. I mean, you can get adapters that range from like in the $50 price range up to the $300 price range. You know, talk to Ben about that, and they work perfectly well. Yeah.
Great. Well, I think that's our last question for the day, unless I see any come in here in the next couple seconds. But I did want to make everyone aware of a little event we're going to do later in this week. Actually on Thursday from 5 to 6. We have Barney and Lewis, who are probably, if you've been to our Rancho Mirage store at all, for our Fuji events, those are the gentlemen that usually show up and shows the camera along with Michael, and we are going to have a little happy hour with Fujifilm. So bring your beverage of choice. We'll actually have everyone sign on with video, so it's a little bit different. You'll have to get a code and everything once you sign up on our Eventbrite, which I'll send all that in an email. It'll also be on our events page on our website. You can sign up. It's just going to be a AMA, ask anything, pick the brains about anything Fujifilm, talk lenses and film simulations and X-T4, X100V, all the cool cameras that Fujifilm has recently announced and that are very exciting. We'll just have that from 5 to 6. It's very informal, nothing special as far as a presentation goes, but you can drop by and we can virtually have a little get together on that. We also have the rest of our month with webinar series. We've got several coming up with different vendors, including Capture One. We're going to do another software editing and workflow presentation with them. That will be very interesting, and they have a Fujifilm version. So they work quite well. I've been using my X-T3 with that. We've got several others coming up that are both announced and unannounced. So keep an eye on our events page on the website or watch for emails from us. We'll keep you up to date on that. And if you have any questions concerning X-T4, how to get one,